What's up, guys? This is my UFC prediction video. Last week, I went 12-2 on my picks with zero tape study. So this week, I'm going to go for the perfect card again. And starting off at the main event, we have Movsar Evloev versus Lerone Murphy. And when you're picking between two undefeated fighters, it's never easy. But my initial lean is Evloev because he trains at American Top Team with a lot of the Dagestani wrestlers. And if this turns into a close fight, his wrestling and control time could be the difference. I think that could be enough for the judges to give him the nod. In the next fight, we have Luke Riley versus Michael Aswell Jr. Now, Luke Riley is coming off a knockout win against Bogdan Grad. And I rate Michael Aswell to be at a similar level as Bogdan Grad. And he's also just as hittable. So since Luke Riley has 4 knockout wins in his last 5 fights, and he's coming in undefeated, I think that combined is just going to lead to him coming back into the cage and getting another knockout win with his power. So I'm picking Luke Riley. Next we have Michael Page versus Sam Patterson. And instinctively, I'm going to pick Michael Page to win by knockout. And despite Patterson being younger and having some momentum, I don't think he's going to be able to find Michael Page on the feet. And watching Sam Patterson's fights in the past, I've noticed that he does get tagged a lot. And if he gets tagged by Michael Page, it's not going to end well for him. Next, we have Iwo Baranowski versus Austin Lane. Lane has lost 4 of his last 5, 3 by knockout, and he's nearly 39 years old. So although Iwo Baranowski might be a little green, he just knocked out Ibo Aslan. So that proves that he belongs at this level. And fighting Austin Lane feels like he's stepping down a level from fighting Ibo. So I'm definitely going with Iwo Baranowski. Next, we have Roman Dolidze versus Christian Leroy Duncan. I'm going to go with Duncan to win by KO at some point in this fight. I'll pick round 2. Roman looks kind of crazy and tough, but he does wilt to the power of other fighters at times. And I think Christian Leroy Duncan's youth and reach will definitely benefit him in this fight. And despite all this, I do see a world where Roman Dolidze could find a submission in this fight. But I think 9 times out of 10, Christian wins it on the feet. Next, we have Curtis Campbell versus Danny Silva. Now, if you look at the odds, Curtis Campbell is currently the favorite, and I don't understand why. But like I said, I don't do tape study. But despite those facts, I'm going to go with Danny Silva. He had a split decision win in his debut, and he also followed that up with another split decision win. But his most recent win was against Kevin Vallejos, who we just saw win this Saturday against Josh Emmett. So if he was able to do that against Kevin Vallejos, I think he could probably withstand a person making his debut in the UFC. And Tapology people seem like they don't agree with that. But I'm going to go with Danny Silva. Next, we have Mason Jones versus Axel Sola. And I'm going to go with Mason Jones. He's very skilled. And despite the height disadvantage that Mason will be facing, I think he'll still come out the winner. This other guy, Axel Sola, I keep wanting to say Sosa, but Axel Sola, he KO'd Reese McKee, which is good, but it's not the most impressive thing in the world. But it definitely shows, I guess, he's a UFC level fighter. But I think Mason will be too skilled for him at this point in time. Next, we have Nathaniel Wood versus Lucen Keita. Now, I think Lucen could just come out and get a KO victory right away. Or perhaps at any point in the fight, he might be live for a KO. But I think Wood is pretty impressive all around. And I think that's going to benefit him in this fight. And he's going to be able to avoid the big shots of Lucen and fight a well-rounded MMA match and come out with a decision win or perhaps even a submission. Next, we have Mario Pinto versus Felipe Franco. I'm going to go with Pinto by KO, round 1. Pinto's undefeated, and he's been fighting people with decent experience. But if you look at the records of this Felipe Franco, of the opponents he's been facing, 1-1, 10-7, a 50-50 fighter. Freddie Vidal is 3-0, an 0 fighter, a 0-1 fighter. So I'm definitely going with Mario Pinto. Antonio Tricoli versus Montas Kondratovicus. I know I butchered that, but you might think I'm losing my mind or have lost it, but I promise you I haven't. I think that Antonio Tricoli can win this fight by submission. He's the bigger fighter with more experience in the cage. And despite Montas being a minus 575 favorite, this is his UFC debut. And I think Antonio at this point is good enough to avoid the KO shots. And he's going to be the bigger man in there with bigger reach. And I think he can use that to his advantage on the feet and just eventually get this fight to the ground and find a submission. Next, we have Louis Sutherland versus Brando Perikic. I'm not going to lie, at first, I just thought Louis for sure is going to get the win. Looks like he's going to fight someone who also likes to go out there and bang. If you look down here at all these KOs, got some submissions too. But then I looked down here and saw that this guy, Brando, is coming out of City Kickboxing. So considering that and that he's the taller fighter with bigger reach and he's a little younger, I think he's probably going to get the KO win. Because Louis Sutherland is kind of stiff. When you watch him fight, he reminds me of Larry Wheels trying to punch a punching bag. He's got too much muscle on his body. Actually, despite that, he can no longer take his steroids because he's in the UFC. He looks a little watered down now. So I think all that combined is going to lead to a Brando KO win. And then next we have Shamrock versus Abdul Karim Al-Salwadi. I don't like the chin of Abdul, and I think Shamrock can find the win on the feet or on the ground, right? He could definitely get a submission. And Abdul, he won against George Hardwick, but recently we saw him get KO'd. So I'm going to stick with my Shamrock pick. And then next we have Chanel Dyer versus Ravina Oliveira. For some reason, Chanel is a minus 350 favorite. Maybe you guys can explain why to me in the comments. But despite that, I'm going to go with Ravina Oliveira. Because she's the one, despite her 2 recent losses, she's the one with UFC experience. And in the last 3 fights has been fighting people with plentiful experience, seasoned opponents. So this fight will probably be close. And although Oliveira is my pick, I wouldn't put a bunch of money on it. Or any at all. And then in the first fight of the night is Melissa Mullins, no mess, versus Luana Carolina. And I'm going to go Carolina to win by decision. And don't ask me why. Apparently, people on Tapology don't think so, for the most part. Those are my picks. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to share and subscribe. Catch y'all later.